always thought the hardest sound in the world was silence. That kind of silence that comes after you say, "I love you," and the person you're saying it to hesitates before answering. That was the silence I got from Claire 3 months before everything fell apart. At the time I brushed it off. 16 years of marriage had taught me that people go through quiet phases, especially when juggling kids, careers, and bills. I thought she was just stressed. Thought maybe she needed a break. But the truth, she was already gone. It started with something small, as these things often do. Claire began guarding her phone. Not in an obvious way at first. Just subtle. Flipping it face down during dinner, silencing notifications, taking calls outside for work. Then one night, around 11:30 p.m., her phone buzzed on the nightstand while she was in the shower. I wasn't trying to snoop, but when the screen lit up, I saw a preview of the message. "Ethan, can't stop thinking about last night." The words punched through me. I remember just sitting there, staring at that glowing screen, feeling my heart trying to convince my brain that there had to be an explanation. Work joke. Old friend. Autocorrect mistake. When she came out, wrapped in her towel, hair damp, eyes tired, I asked quietly, "Who's Ethan?" Her face froze. Not with guilt, but with calculation. "The new marketing guy," she said after a second too long. "Why?" I didn't answer. Just nodded. And for the first time, I noticed how she avoided looking directly at me. That's when the doubt began. The kind that eats at you when you're alone. Every text she sent, every late night at the office, every girls' weekend, suddenly felt like part of a pattern I'd been too trusting to see. A week later, I installed a small GPS tracker in her car. I hated myself for it. Felt like I was betraying her by even suspecting her. But that night, as I sat in my parked truck watching the little blinking dot move across my phone screen, all the rationalizations I'd built for months began to crumble. She wasn't at work. She wasn't at her friend Laura's like she said. She was parked outside a cheap roadside motel. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. 16 years. 2 kids. Mortgage. Vacations. Promises. All unraveling in front of me on a map. I didn't go inside that night. Instead, I drove to the lake we used to visit before we were married. Sat there till sunrise, staring at the reflection of the dawn on the water, trying to figure out what kind of man I was supposed to be now. The confrontation came 3 days later. I waited until the kids were at school. Claire was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, sipping coffee like nothing had changed. "Who is he?" asked. My voice was calm, almost detached. She looked up, startled. "What?" "Ethan. The man you've been seeing." The mug slipped slightly in her hand before she steadied it. "You're being ridiculous, Daniel." I slid my phone across the table toward her. On the screen was a photo, a screenshot from the GPS app showing her car parked at that motel, timestamp 9:47 p.m. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She didn't even try to deny it this time. I asked, "How long?" Her eyes flickered. "A few months." I nodded slowly. The air between us felt thick, like the oxygen had been replaced by grief. "Why?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "I don't know. I just felt unseen. Like we were roommates, not partners. Ethan made me feel wanted again." That line, "made me feel wanted again," tore through me like a blade. "Unseen," I said quietly. "I worked 2 jobs when you went back to school. I skipped vacations so you could get your degree. I was there for every late night, every project, every doubt. You were never unseen, Claire. You just stopped looking." Tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were the tears of someone caught, forced to face the weight of their choices. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It just happened." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "You don't accidentally fall into a motel room, Claire." The next few weeks were a blur of numbness. I slept on the couch. The house felt hollow, like it had been stripped of warmth and meaning. We barely spoke except for logistics about the kids. She begged me to try counseling. "We can fix this," she said one night, voice trembling. "Please, Dan. We've built a life. Don't throw it away. But every time I looked at her, I saw that text message. Can't stop thinking about last night. It looped in my mind like a song I couldn't turn off. I didn't throw it away, I thought. You did. Still, part of me wanted to believe her. Wanted to think maybe we could patch it up. 16 years isn't something you just erase. So, I agreed to go to therapy. For 3 sessions I tried. Listened. Talked. Cried. But she lied. I found out when our therapist gently suggested full transparency. Phone access, honesty about communication. Claire hesitated, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. That night while she was asleep I checked. There were new messages. Same man. Same motel. Same lies. That was the moment love turned to ash. The next morning I woke her up and said, "You don't need to explain anything anymore. I'm done." Her eyes widened. "Dan, please. I gave you a second chance," I said softly. "You used it to keep lying." I packed a bag and left the house before she could answer. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just walked out quietly, because sometimes silence speaks louder than rage. The divorce took 9 months. She cried in mediation, swore she never meant to hurt me. Her lawyer talked about emotional neglect and mutual fault. But I stayed calm, focused, because grief had already burned everything inside me. The hardest part wasn't the legal process, it was explaining it to our kids. Our daughter Emma was 16, old enough to sense what happened. She looked at me one night and asked, "Did Mom cheat?" I wanted to protect her, to soften the truth. But lies had already done enough damage. "Yes," I said quietly. She nodded, eyes wet but steady. "You didn't deserve that, Dad." That sentence broke me more than anything Claire ever said. A year later, the house was sold. I moved into a small apartment near the edge of town. It was quiet, lonely, but it was honest. Some nights I still caught myself replaying memories like old films. Our wedding, our first apartment, the time she surprised me with tickets to my favorite band. Those moments felt like ghosts now. Familiar but unreachable. One afternoon I got a letter in the mail. It was from Claire. Inside was a short note in her handwriting. "I'm sorry. Truly. Ethan was a mistake. I've lost everything that mattered. I hope someday you can forgive me." I stared at that note for a long time before setting it on fire in the sink. Because forgiveness isn't about letting them back in. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of their choices. It's been 3 years now. I've built something new, small but solid. A new apartment, a new routine, a quiet peace I didn't think I'd ever find again. I'm even seeing someone. She knows what happened. She doesn't flinch when I talk about it. But sometimes late at night when I lie in bed, I still think about that moment. The silence after I said, "I love you," and she hesitated. I wonder if that was the first crack. If I could have done something different. If 16 years of love could have survived the storm of her choices. Then I remind myself of something my therapist once said. You can't save someone who's already chosen to leave. And maybe that's the lesson. That sometimes the hardest part of betrayal isn't losing the person. It's losing the version of yourself who still believed they'd never hurt you. If you ask me today what betrayal feels like, I'd tell you this. It's not the anger. Not even the heartbreak. It's walking through the house you built together and realizing every photo on the wall is a lie. It's sitting across from the woman you once called your best friend and realizing you don't recognize her anymore. It's watching her lips move as she says, "It didn't mean anything," and knowing it meant everything. But it's also this. It's surviving. It's learning to breathe again after the silence. It's rebuilding from ashes and discovering that maybe, just maybe, there's something stronger waiting on the other side of pain. Because the truth about betrayal is that it doesn't just destroy, it also reveals. It shows you who you are when everything you thought you needed is gone. And for me, that's where I found myself again. Right there in the quiet. Where love used to live. And where peace finally moved in.